At the altar, with the entire world watching, the Millionaire CEO looked at his stunning bride and then turned to a stranger on the catering staff and said, "I choose her instead." He thought he was making a power move, but he had no idea he was just sealing his own fate, because years later, when he'd lost everything, the woman he would have to beg for a job was her. The Grand Cathedral of the Pines wasn't just a church, it was a monument to old money and new ambition. Its vaulted ceilings echoed with the hushed whispers of 1,000 of the city's most powerful people. Every detail was an exercise in breathtaking excess. Peonies, flown in from Holland, seemed to pour from every surface, their scent mixing with the expensive perfume of the guests. A string quartet played softly, a delicate soundtrack to the networking that never really stops. And what a wedding it was. Marcus Wellington, the 32-year-old CEO of Wellington Industries, a man who'd graced the cover of Forbes for his ruthless market takeovers, was finally getting married. His bride was Tiffany van der Meer, a woman whose beauty was as famous as her family's fortune. She was perfect, a porcelain doll bred for this moment. This wasn't just a marriage, it was a merger, a consolidation of power that would make them the undisputed king and queen of the city. Marcus stood at the altar, a vision of tailored perfection. He smiled the smile of a conqueror, scanning the crowd of senators and rival CEOs. He felt a surge of pure invincibility. He was Marcus Wellington. He did what he wanted, and the world simply rearranged itself for him. Meanwhile, on the edge of it all, practically invisible, was Sarah Johnson. At 24, she was a ghost in this opulent machine, a member of the catering staff from Aura Events. In her simple black uniform, she moved with practiced efficiency, making sure water glasses were full. For her, this wasn't a fairy tale. It was a 12-hour shift, the second of her 3 jobs. Her world was made of utility bills and her little brother's tuition. She paused for a second, hidden behind a marble pillar to watch the ceremony start. The organ swelled as Tiffany van der Meer began to walk down the aisle. A collective gasp went through the crowd. She was flawless, her eyes locked on Marcus. But as she reached the altar, something strange happened. Marcus's triumphant smile faltered. He looked at Tiffany, and he didn't see a partner. He saw a transaction, a beautifully packaged, socially approved deal. He saw a future of predictable charity events and sterile dinner parties. In that instant, a wave of crushing emptiness washed over him. This wasn't power. It was a cage. His eyes, suddenly wild, darted away from his bride. They scanned the faces in the crowd, and then they landed on Sarah. She was standing near the back, her brow furrowed with a weariness that felt more real than anything else in that room. In her dark, intelligent eyes, he didn't see admiration or envy, just a quiet, tough dignity. She was an anchor of reality in his ocean of illusion, a chaotic, reckless idea, the kind of high-risk impulse that had made him a billionaire, flashed in his mind. He could do anything. The officiant cleared his throat. "Do you, Marcus Wellington, take Tiffany?" Marcus held up a hand, silencing the man. A confused murmur rippled through the cathedral. Tiffany's smile tightened. "Marcus, what is it?" she whispered. He ignored her. His gaze stayed locked on Sarah, who was now utterly bewildered. "No," Marcus said, his voice ringing with shocking clarity. The quartet stopped. The silence was absolute. "No, I don't." Tiffany flinched. Her father, a titan of industry himself, started to get up from the front row, his face turning red. Marcus turned to the crowd like a showman. "My whole life I've made choices based on strategy, on what's advantageous." He gestured vaguely at Tiffany. "This is the ultimate transaction, and I refuse." Then he did the unthinkable. He pointed directly at the catering waitress. "Her," he declared, his voice booming. "I choose her." Every head whipped around. 1,000 pairs of eyes, a mix of disbelief and cruel curiosity, landed on Sarah Johnson. She froze, a deer in the headlights. This had to be a joke. "What?" Sarah mouthed silently. Tiffany let out a choked sob. The media, smelling blood, started to sneak their phones up to record. Marcus, high on the audacity of it all, took a step down from the altar. "You," he said, his eyes still on Sarah. "The woman working. You're more real than anyone in this room. What's your name?" Sarah," she stammered. "Sarah," he repeated. "I don't want this." He swept his arm across the opulent scene. "I want something real. I choose you, Sarah." It wasn't a proposal. It was a proclamation, an act of supreme arrogance. And then chaos erupted. Tiffany finally broke down as her father was held back, his face a mask of pure rage. Guests were on their feet, shouting and recording. In the pandemonium, a security guard came to Sarah. "Mr. Wellington wants to speak with you," he said. In a state of shock, she could only nod. She was escorted through a side door to a small vestry where Marcus was pacing, having already torn off his tuxedo jacket. "I did it," he breathed, like he expected congratulations. "I broke the matrix." Sarah found her voice. "What did you do? You just destroyed that woman. You humiliated her in front of everyone." Marcus scoffed. "Tiffany will be fine. She was marrying a balance sheet. This is about me and you." He stepped closer. "I saw you and I realized I was making the biggest mistake of my life." "So you decided to make an even bigger one," Sarah shot back. "You don't know a single thing about me." "I know you're not one of them," he said intensely, "and that's enough." He pulled out a checkbook, scribbled furiously, and held the check out to her. "I've just blown up my life. You were caught in the crossfire. This is for your trouble." Sarah looked at the check. Her eyes went wide. It was for $1 million. It would solve every single one of her problems: her brother's tuition, her mum's mortgage, a life without the constant, grinding weight of being broke. But it was also an insult, a payment for playing a role in his grand, dramatic gesture. He hadn't chosen her. He had used her. She was just a prop, a symbol of a realness he didn't even understand. Her hand, which had started to reach for the check, clenched into a fist. She looked up at his arrogant, expectant face. "No," she said, her voice quiet but hard as iron. Marcus blinked, stunned. "No? It's $1 million. Take it." "You think you can ruin a woman's life and then just write a check to the collateral damage and walk away clean?" she asked, her anger burning through her fear. "That money. It's as fake as everything else in that church. I won't be another one of your transactions, Mr. Wellington." He was stunned into silence. Nobody said no to Marcus Wellington. "I quit," she said. She turned and walked out, leaving the millionaire standing alone with his useless check and the echoes of the world's most scandalous wedding. Walking away from $1 million, she felt something that Marcus, with all his billions, had never known. She felt free. The story of Marcus Wellington's altar apocalypse became an instant legend, with grainy cell phone videos going viral. For a week, he was the most talked-about man in the world, and Marcus loved it. He leaned into the story, playing the rebellious maverick. In interviews, he spun his actions as a moment of profound clarity, a choice of authenticity over aristocracy. He never mentioned Sarah's rejection of his $1 million apology. His company, Wellington Industries, took an initial hit, but Marcus, fueled by arrogance, doubled down. He rebranded as a disruptor, making riskier investments and pushing for reckless expansions. He truly saw himself as untouchable, and for a while, the market mistook his gambling for genius. But foundations built on arrogance are made of glass. A global recession hit, and the high-risk sectors where Marcus had bet the farm collapsed. His prophetic instincts were exposed as a lucky streak. Competitors who had been patiently waiting saw their opening. Deals fell apart. Within 3 years, Wellington Industries filed for bankruptcy. Marcus, the man who had it all, lost everything. For Sarah Johnson, those same years couldn't have been more different. She walked away from $1 million into an uncertain future. She'd lost her job and become an unwilling footnote in a billionaire's drama. Reporters hounded her, but she turned down every offer to tell her story. She saw the money Marcus had offered not as a prize but as a test. Taking it would have made her a character in his play. By rejecting it, she took back her own story. But dignity doesn't pay the bills. Unemployed and infamous, she felt a wave of despair looking at a pile of final notice bills. It would have been so easy to take that check, but then her eyes landed on a dusty textbook on software engineering from a community college course she'd had to drop. A different kind of idea sparked in her mind. She sold her beat-up car for a few $1,000s. It wasn't $1 million, but it was hers. She used it to re-enroll in school, this time with a laser focus. Her life became a grueling routine. Classes by day, studying late into the night, and working odd jobs on weekends. While Marcus was giving speeches about disruption, Sarah was quietly learning what it really meant. She wasn't trying to break the system. She was learning how to build a new one. And it turned out she had a gift for it. She graduated at the top of her class and won a full scholarship to a top engineering university. There she thrived. While other students chased corporate internships, Sarah was already building. In her dorm room, fueled by cheap coffee and grit, she developed an idea, a logistics platform for the small, independent businesses being crushed by giants, businesses like the ones she'd worked for. She named her company Nexus. Her first office was a corner of her student apartment. Her first employees were 2 other scholarship kids who worked for a stake in the company. Her big break came from a small grocery co-op that was about to go under. Sarah and her team worked for free for 3 months, implementing their Nexus system. They reorganized the co-op's supply chain and cut waste by 30%. The co-op didn't just survive, it thrived. Word spread. Other small businesses came calling. Nexus grew organically, built on trust and real results. By the time Marcus Wellington was selling off his last assets, Sarah Johnson was closing a funding round that valued Nexus in the hundreds of millions. She was the founder and CEO of one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country, with a headquarters overlooking the city. She never talked about the wedding. She was no longer a footnote in Marcus Wellington's story. She was the author of her own. 7 years after the altar apocalypse, Marcus Wellington's name was a cautionary tale. The swagger was gone, replaced by the quiet desperation of a man who'd flown too close to the sun. At 39, he lived in a small apartment, his tailored suits replaced by off-the-rack ones. His last hope was an interview for a senior project manager position at a tech unicorn called Nexus, whose rapid rise was legendary. Getting a job there wasn't just a paycheck, it was a chance to be relevant again. He put on his best, slightly worn suit. The Nexus headquarters was a marvel of modern design, buzzing with an energy that felt like another universe compared to the stuffy boardrooms he once commanded. An assistant led him down a bright hallway. "The CEO likes to be involved in the final interviews for senior roles," the assistant said. "She'll be joining the head of HR to meet you." Marcus nodded, his stomach churning. He was led into a spacious corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows. A woman sat behind a large desk, her back to him as she spoke on the phone. The head of HR, a kind-looking man, stood and extended a hand. "Mr. Wellington, thank you for coming in. Please have a seat." Marcus sat, his hands clenched. He could hear the CEO's calm, measured voice. It sounded vaguely familiar. "No, the acquisition terms are non-negotiable. Their platform is redundant, but their data set will accelerate our market entry. That's the value. Hold firm," the voice said. "I'll call you back." The woman swiveled her chair around, and Marcus Wellington's world stopped. It was Sarah Johnson. This wasn't the weary, frightened girl in a catering uniform. The 7 years that had broken him had forged her. Her simple, elegant dress spoke of a confidence deeper than any price tag, but it was her eyes that hit him the hardest. The quiet dignity he'd glimpsed years ago was now the calm, unshakable core of a leader. She looked at him without a flicker of surprise. She'd known he was coming. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. The universe couldn't be this poetic, this cruel. "Mr. Wellington," Sarah said, her voice perfectly even. She gestured to the head of HR. "This is David. I'm Sarah Johnson, CEO of Nexus." David, oblivious, smiled. "Sarah, Mr. Wellington has an impressive, if unconventional, resume." Sarah's eyes met Marcus's. He was here, begging for a job from the woman he'd turned into a spectacle, the woman who had rejected his $1 million pity check. "I've reviewed your file, Mr. Wellington," she began, all business. "You've had a dynamic career. It says you have experience in rapid growth scaling. We're looking for a project manager to oversee new acquisitions." He could only manage a strangled nod. Let's start, she continued. Tell me about a time you had to make a high-stakes decision under extreme pressure. What was your process? What was the outcome? And what did you learn from it? The question hung in the air like a perfectly aimed arrow. He was right back at that altar. That was a high-stakes decision. The outcome? His ruin, her rise. What did he learn? He was only just beginning to figure that out. He stammered, trying to pull a sanitized corporate story from a lifetime ago. The words felt hollow and fake. She listened patiently, her expression impossible to read. When he finished, she moved on. Describe your leadership style. How do you handle public relations for a project that might be perceived negatively? Another direct hit. He thought of his disastrous PR tour after the wedding. He tried to answer, spouting jargon, but his voice cracked. This wasn't an interview. It was a reckoning. Finally, she leaned back. Thank you, Mr. Wellington. I have one last question, Marcus. Using his first name was a deliberate, intimate blow. Why do you want to work here? The rehearsed answer died on his lips. He looked at this woman, this force of nature he had unknowingly set in motion, and knew lies were useless. All the arrogance was gone, burned away by humility. Because I have nothing left, he said, his voice barely a whisper, and because I see what you've built, and I'm in awe. I made a spectacle of you. I used you as a prop, and you said no. You took nothing, and you built this. I took everything for granted, and I built nothing that lasted. A tear slid down his cheek. I don't deserve to work here, but I'm asking for a chance, not to be a star, but just to work, to be part of something real. The silence in the room was heavy. David looked back and forth, finally sensing the deep history. Sarah watched him, her expression softening. She didn't see the arrogant billionaire. She saw a broken man who had finally, after 7 years, understood. She stood, extending a hand. Your start date is Monday, she said, her voice gentle but firm. You'll be reporting to the Director of Integration. It's an entry-level position on the team. The salary is non-negotiable. Welcome to Nexus. Marcus stared at her hand. An entry-level position. A cubicle. It was the ultimate humiliation, and also the most profound act of grace he had ever seen. She wasn't getting revenge. She was offering him a chance to earn his way back, to rebuild himself from the ground up just like she did. He took her hand, his own trembling. Thank you, Sarah, he said, his voice thick with emotion. She gave a single, firm nod. Don't thank me. Just do the work. As Marcus Wellington left that office, he knew his life hadn't just changed. It had finally begun. He wasn't a CEO or a millionaire. He was a man, humbled by his past and grateful for a future he didn't deserve. Sarah Johnson didn't give him a handout. She gave him a challenge. She showed him that true power isn't about what you can take, but what you can build. If this story of humility and second chances touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more inspirational stories. What do you think of Sarah's decision? Let us know in the comments below.